You're listening to Sharky on Sharko's Chunk. Welcome back, my fellow listeners, to another true story, a true tale from one of our subscribers. A hospital is meant to be a place for hopefully mending when we grow old and our care is needed to be more thorough. We will go to a care home, an elderly home, a place where those around us can give us some support and special attention on our last few months, last few years of life. Tonight, we have a story from a caregiver that does work at one of these care centers. One of these places that is supposed to be a place of mending, of healing, at least a place of love in your last few days. But when people do pass, what happens? Why are these halls of these hospitals haunted by shadows? Why do we see people that once was there still walking around? Why is it that in some places, when somebody passes, it's tradition to open a window to release their spirit? We believe in ghosts. We believe in creatures of the night. We believe in shadows for a reason. Let's hear one of those stories. I have been a nurse assistant for about 4 years. There hasn't been anything unusual that has happened until I started working at this assisted living and memory care facility. It was October of 2019 when I started to work with memory care. Things started off normal until a few months later, in January of 2020, when there have been unusual things beginning to happen. I would be working the second shift, 8 hours there, and lights would be flickering a lot, even when the light bulbs had just recently been changed. I would start to feel cold spots in some areas, and I would get goosebumps on my arm. There were times when I hear the kitchen door slam shut late at night, after all the residents were already in bed. One night, I was sitting down at one of the tables, folding laundry for the residents. It was a little around 8:30 p.m. All the residents were in their rooms asleep. It was just one of my coworkers and I working, no one else around. As I was folding laundry, I saw someone walking by the dining area. When I looked at who the person was, I noticed it was my first resident, Miss Johnson, who had died a couple weeks ago. It took me by surprise as I saw her walking. I remembered she couldn't walk when she was still living here. And when I saw Mrs. Johnson walking, she looked right at me, smiled, and disappeared. I wasn't too freaked out when I first saw her. It wasn't my first time ever seeing a ghost. My co-worker, Angela, was in the laundry room finishing up. As she came back, I told her what had happened. My co-worker started to tell me what she had seen the other day. And I quote, "The other day I saw Mrs. Smith in Mrs. Johnson's old room talking. When I went to see who she was talking to, there was no one in there. I had asked Mrs. Smith who she was talking to, and she said she was talking to Mrs. Johnson. And I reminded her she had passed away a few weeks earlier. I told her, okay, well, I'll leave you to have your talk with her. And I can't believe what you saw. I would be freaking out if that ever happened to me. I never experienced and seen anything like that." End quote. I mentioned to Angela that I have seen ghosts before, but not my old patients. Mrs. Johnson was the first resident that I had lost ever anything like that since I became a nurse assistant. The shift was coming to an end, so we went our separate ways. Fast forward to March of 2020. I was working one night and doing my last rounds, checking if the residents need to use the bathroom or needed to be changed, doing my daily routine. I came up to one of the rooms which had an older couple, Mrs. Thompson. Now, Mrs. Thompson had just lost her husband a few weeks before this very night. He was the second person I had lost since working at this job. She still asked some days where he was at. As I walked into the room, I turned on the light, looking right over to Mrs. Johnson. And there was her husband standing right next to her bedside, smiling down at her. I walked over to her and asked, "Do you need to use the restroom, Mrs. Thompson, like I normally do?" She shook her head no and fell back asleep. I got her situated and started to head back to the door. And I took one last look at Mrs. Thompson, making sure that she did fall asleep. Mr. Thompson was still there, looked at me with a smile. I knew in that way he was thanking me for everything that I have done. I smiled back at him and turned back around, shutting off the lights and then heading to check on my other residents. As time went on working at this facility, there still was unusual things happening, like flickering lights, doors shutting, but I didn't see any other ghosts since then. Now, for all of you listening to this story, have you ever had any experiences like this before? And how did you react? Stories that take place by nurses and doctors in hospitals can be creepy. They see so much death. They're around people at their weakest and not at their strongest. But while that place, a hospital, is meant to be one where you're able to rest in peace, what about those places where you rest naturally, in your bed? Our next story comes from a subscriber that had a dream. Everyone has dreams here and there, but dreams that pull you away from reality, make you think, is this real? Is this not real? When you wake up, did that really happen? Let's listen to our next story. This story is called, "I Have a True Story I Can Give You If You Want Me To, but I'm kind of nervous to tell you because it was probably the most scariest thing that has happened in my life." You know what? I will just tell you in a comment reply. Oh Lord, my heart is pounding right now. But anyways, here is how it is. I was about 11 years old, and I was in 6th grade. It was the year 2014, and I was sick, and I was at my school, and I told my school's office that I was sick a little. So then they called my stepmom. But she's not my stepmom anymore because she was a little bit of a jerk to my dad, and her kids were snots. But anyways, I was laying in one of the school's beds, and she eventually came and picked me up. So then, as I got home, I went pee, and my stepmom gave me some medicine, and then I went to bed. Now this is where the messed up, scary stuff starts to happen. So I was in my dreams, and everything looked abnormal. Like, my TV doesn't even look like a TV anymore. It looked very strange. But I can't really remember how I saw it, though. It just wasn't my TV. But everything looked like it was from a kind of church or museum. So then I see that there was some kind of claw of a lion statue on the side of my bed. So then as I tried getting out of bed, this purple mist started surrounding the claw. And then after a few seconds, I saw that the claw was connected to some Grim Reaper looking thing. And this is something, he said, that I will always remember till the world ends. You will be stuck in this nightmare forever. Ha 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 ha. So then I started fighting back. After I defeated this creature, and the same thing happened again. I tried getting out of bed, and I had to fight him again. Then after that, phase 3 started. This time, I wasn't fighting the same creature. This time, I was fighting a creature that kind of looked like the bully from Paranorman, but a zombie version. So then I tore him apart, and really nothing happened. I was still standing in that very weird nightmare until I walked out of my room, and I see that my bathroom door was some kind of portal. So I jumped into it, and I woke up in the real world, finally. I made sure that it was the actual real world instead of that Christopher nightmare I had just had. And then after I got out of bed, I told myself that I wouldn't tell anyone until now, since I was so scared. Well, there's my story, and I really hope it's good enough for you to read in a video. And yes, that was scary enough for me to read it in a video. And I thank you very much for that story. I thank all of my subscribers for listening and telling me their own stories. But dreams. What are dreams? I myself had dreams that are so realistic, I'm sure they were real, but then I wake up and they're not. Of course, there's those vague dreams, randomness, silly ones. But then the dreams that are scary, the ones you hear voices, the ones that you feel, you can touch those things that are in there. Are they dreams? Alternate dimensions? Maybe past lives? I'm curious to know what you guys believe. What do you think dreams are? And for those that worked in hospitals, what about your stories? Have you seen any shadows, ghosts, or people that you knew? Feel free to tell me and send me your stories at stories, the number 4, Sharky, at gmail.com. Once again, stories, the number 4, Sharky, Sharky, at gmail.com. You're listening to Sharky with Shark Chomp, and I hope you all have a good night.